is a note to the forgotten feminine, with love letters to and from all kinds of women. Here for the daughters carrying the world upon their spine, wherefore the silence of our grandmothers we rise. Here to remember our power and shed our doubt. Forget the bullshit the patriarchy's on about. This is an ode to the forgotten feminine, with love letters to and from all kinds of women.
At the time that I am recording this, I am turning 26 in 2.5 hours. And every single year on my birthday, I sit down with my journal. I reflect on all of the things that I learned throughout the course of that year. I whip out my camera roll. I look through all the amazing things that I did in the year. I thank the universe for all the wonderful memories. I'll pull some tarot for the year ahead, and I just let myself leave those blessings in the past with the good energy from them to move me forward into the next year. And thankfully, I have this beautiful platform on which I get to share this wisdom with you. So this episode is for you. If you are 25 this year, maybe your birthday is creeping up. Happy early birthday to you, if that is the case. And my hope is to inspire you with 5 of the biggest lessons that I wish I knew going into 25 this time last year. Because let me tell you, 25 was a pilgrimage. It was an initiation. It was my year 7 in numerology. For those of you that don't know, your year 7 is like a year of a lot of chaos, a lot of severing yourself from who you were, and obviously that comes with a lot of letting go that we don't always think we're ready to do. And so if you're maybe feeling like that energy is creeping up on you, or you foresee that 25 is going to be a year that demands a lot from you, it's because it probably is. I really feel, and this is true for everybody in my inner circle that is 25, was 25, is turning 25, it is a year of immense growth, because apparently this is when our prefrontal cortex stops developing. It becomes a little bit more solid. And let me tell you, when it's rearranging the pieces, there's a lot of room for things to go wary. So, my darling, hopefully this can be a bit of a survival guide for you this year. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. My name is Mariana. I'm the host of the Letters to and From Women podcast. I'm also a somatic healing guide for women who feel invisible in their own lives. Maybe you too are a woman who is an absolute overgiver, overthinker, and you are lost continuously self-abandoning yourself to be loved or to be perceived as enough by others. These conversations on the podcast are where I take the insights from my sessions with clients into these accessible chats where you can learn how to heal the survival patterns that are keeping you from being safe to be beautifully and authentically yourself. And we're just going to get right to it. I have my little whimsical notebook with my 5 lessons written here, and I'm going to give you the goods because there's lots of goods to be given here. So, lesson number 1 that I wish I knew when I started out at 25 is friendships should soothe you. That's a tongue twister. Friendships should soothe you, not make you abandon yourself. I know we all know that female friendships, I think at any time of life, can be a little messy, but they are especially messy in our 20s, I believe, because we are evolving so quickly and we are intercepted at so many times by so many influences, and we're learning so much about the world that we're then integrating into our own identity. And obviously that gets reflected in our outer world. And I think a lot of the times one of the first areas to take the brunt of that transformation is our friendships. And I can truly say that 2025 was the year that I learned that when you realize that you are shrinking yourself to continue fitting in spaces that reflected a previous version of you that was living from survival, there is no looking back. And maybe this is you in your own life right now. You're feeling maybe unfulfilled by your current friendships, or you have a friend or two that you feel like you're just their unpaid therapist. This was certainly the case for me. Or maybe you just feel really taken for granted and you don't really know if it's you or if it's the relationship reaching its expiry date. I personally let go of 2 friendships this year. One that I will say was definitely a reflection in many ways of who I am evolving into and what I no longer want to make room for in my life. But the second friendship, I can definitely say, as it was also reflected back to me by the other loving people around me, because the one quick thing I'll tell you as well is that when you either get into a loving relationship or you make loving friendships with people who pour into you because they genuinely want to, because they get to, it will highlight the friendships in your life where you are not being valued in the same way. And the moment you see it, you should not try to unsee it. And so for me, there was a particular friendship in my life where I felt like the unpaid therapist. I would literally see this person's name pop up on my phone because they would call me after the most minor inconvenience in their life in a state of panic and overwhelm and angst. And I would be the sounding board for an hour just to then in the last 5 minutes be asked like, oh, like, how are you? You know? And I don't mind showing up like that for people every once in a while, but if you cannot count on your hands the amount of times that that person has actually called you just to ask how you're doing before getting into their own stuff, there is a mismatch there in how that person is showing up for you versus how you are showing up for them. And where this all came to a halt for me was after enduring a period with this person where they were going through a lot of really difficult life things. And again, I kept taking their calls because my lesson when I was younger was that that is just how you show up for people, whether you like it or not. You put your needs aside, you shut up, and you listen to them, even if it means that you waste a whole afternoon. And I was helping a particular friend, another friend, move into her new apartment. And I had told this other friend that I wasn't available for their calls that day because I was going to be busy. And that person still proceeded to call me twice. Once when I was helping my friend with the move out process, and this friend that was moving, she witnessed me have this visceral reaction, like my eyes went wide, my body froze at the sight of this person calling me. And she just sat me down and she said, "This is not okay. If that is how you respond to somebody calling you because you're anticipating that it's going to require you to entirely abandon yourself and that person doesn't even notice, we're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that anymore." And that friendship ended shortly after. But I say that because I think so many times we don't want to admit to ourselves that relationships have expired, because a lot of times there isn't a bad guy or there isn't really a tangible reason. It's just that you've both grown out of it, and that's fine. There doesn't have to be a reason beyond that, but give yourself the permission to sever yourself from those relationships, because the last thing I'll say on this is that what followed for me after removing these 2 friendships from my life was they were replaced by so much goodness, so many rich, fulfilling, authentic relationships, because I was no longer expending my energy on places where I was not being authentic and in alignment with what I truly desired. And the same is true for you when you give yourself that permission. All right, lesson number 2. The fear you don't face becomes what you settle for. Oh, this is a hard pill to swallow, but I'm gonna make you swallow it, honey. This is a lesson that I learned very crudely this year. I took 2 jobs that I did not want. I held back so much from sharing my voice and my story and inviting women into the medicine that I offer through my somatic guidance. I was too afraid of my own desires. My dreams scared me. I kept telling myself that I wasn't worthy of having those dreams or that I had to suffer to get them, that I had to put my business on the back burner because being a 20-something woman meant that I had to climb my way up the corporate chain. Such outdated BS stories that do not serve anybody. And it was a crude lesson because the fear that I did not move through became the dissatisfying reality that I kept finding myself in. I would avoid marketing my women's circles that I host here in Vancouver because I was afraid of having a big turnout. Even I could literally sense myself when I was building the event pages, I could sense myself like not trying to hype them up too much or not trying to get people excited or overpromise anything because I didn't think that I had it in me to save, not save because it's not my responsibility to save anybody. I didn't think I had it in me to transform women's lives in the ways that I now know I can. And it's why I kept saying I was going to launch this podcast in like November, December, probably as far back as July of last year. And it took all the way until March of 2026 for it to finally happen. And that's okay. That's okay. I hold no resentment towards myself for any of it. But what I really want you to understand through this particular lesson is that your brain will psych you out of moving through the pain of discomfort, of facing your wounds, your insecurities, and the hard grunting effort that it is going to be to achieve the things that you want. But that does not mean that they're not meant for you. If it's uncomfortable, there's probably a very good reason for that. And it is probably part of the obstacle that you have to learn to overcome to get the thing that you actually desire. When you allow yourself to dream, to get excited by your desires, and the next thing that creeps up is the voice of doubt, the inner critic, the pessimist inside you that says, oh, that's way too hard. He's way too out of my league. You're asking for too much. You're really holding out for high hope here if you really think you can get the apartment and the job and the partner and the dog. Give that voice the space to voice all of its fears, all of its worry. But the second that you associate that voice with your own, that is when you have given your power away to a part of you that is trying in good faith to protect you. But at what point, darling, are you going to decide that your self-protection is actually the thing that is limiting you the most? Because the fear that you don't face will become the dissatisfying reality that you perpetuate in your life and that you continue finding yourself in. And if that is the case for you, there is a lesson there that life wants you to see. And the second you see it, the second you open your heart to it, the second you tell yourself, it's going to be difficult, but I keep hitting this wall because I'm meant to jump over it, that is when your reality will truly shift in favor of your highest self. And by the way, now that I have your attention, and because it's my birthday, if this is true for you, that you are in a cycle of your life where you are feeling deeply dissatisfied at the anxiety you constantly experience, at the overthinking that cripples your ambition and your passion for things and for life, it very much could be that you are stuck in an unconscious trauma loop because of the patterns that you learned in youth that helped you survive once, but that are deeply holding you back from stepping into your most empowered version of you. And if that is the case for you, and if you have a hunch that there is a block there that you can't put your name on, but you want some help identifying and a threshold that you want help crossing, that is exactly what I do in my work. So I will leave information for you to get a free session in the caption of this video and of this episode. And my goal is that in our 1 hour together, whether you choose to move forward with one-on-one coaching with me or not, you actually walk away with tools to help you move forward on this healing journey. Okay, number 3, and this one hit me like a ton of bricks this year. Number 3 is, before you turn to self-blame, check all your variables. I was diagnosed with celiac exactly a week ago today. And why that is important information to this topic is because I fundamentally believe that we are fed the very unfair lie that every struggle we have in life, every point of friction that we have with getting up in the morning, just doing life in general, is our fault, is our laziness in some way, is a byproduct of a mindset problem we have. And let me tell you, starting November of 2025, I became very sick. I was having all these gut health issues where I couldn't eat things like yogurt, eggs, like I would say like protein rich, fattier foods, even like healthy foods. Like I said, yogurt, eggs, peanut butter. I would just have these like severe aversions to foods, and it severely limited what I ate, how much I ate, how many nutrients I was able to process, and it started impacting my health in so many ways. I was losing sleep, I was having digestive issues, my body became weaker, and I was definitely like a little bit malnutritioned. And it even got to the point where mornings became my biggest enemy because I felt so overwhelmed in my nervous system. Like, I would open my eyes and the thought of the day stretching out ahead of me felt impossible. Like, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this day. And it wasn't because I wasn't excited to live the day. It wasn't because I didn't want to do things. It was just, I just felt this deep burnout and exhaustion in my body that I just kept telling myself, it's about my mindset. I haven't healed things yet. I need to just like go and go and go into the books, into the courses, like blah, blah, blah. All to eventually realize that there was nothing else I could do. There was no more childhood trauma that I could unearth that was helping my case. And so I finally went and saw a naturopath. And if you're not from Canada, or you are, you know that unless you have benefits, naturopaths are a pretty penny. But I had been brushed off by our public system, and I decided to seek alternative help, if you can even call it alternative. I love naturopathy. And I got some blood work done, and I go to the naturopath, and she says, you have celiac disease. I don't even know how you're doing as well as you are right now based on your numbers and the inflammation that you're experiencing. And I just had this moment in the chair of that clinic where I was like, all these months of being so hard on myself for the exhaustion, the mood swings I was having, the inconsistency that I kept experiencing in my routine and in my day-to-day, all an undiagnosed problem that was wreaking havoc on my system and therefore every aspect of my life. By the way, I am not saying that there are not mindset components to that. There was a lot of healing that also went on during that period around my work addiction and the people pleasing that I have continued to perpetuate throughout my life. It's why I talk so openly about this on this podcast, because yes, I'm a guide, but I still struggle with my own things. And I think in some ways, this also goes back to the very first lesson on friendship, because I think a lot of the time life can feel inexplicably exhausting or difficult. And we tell ourselves that it's an us problem and we try to biohack or like optimize our way through it, when that exhaustion, I have come to believe through this experience that it is our body's way of forcing us to slow down when it has no other means of getting our attention. And even if you aren't experiencing something like being diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, like I am, or having any other major health issues, if you are experiencing a period of your life where you are exhausted, your desire for things maybe wasn't what it was, obviously make sure that you're getting help and you're going to spaces where you can talk openly about that. But do not be so afraid of being who you've always been that you don't give yourself the space to move through that and to honor what's coming through you. Because a lot of times, I should also say, the phase right before we're about to do a massive up leveling in our life, there is a lot of exhaustion and there is a lot of slowing down that has to happen because we are clearing out so much of the old. And you will suffer the more that you keep telling yourself that you have to be who you've always been. Okay? So that is lesson number 3. Before you turn to self blame, make sure that you've checked all your variables, your nutrition, your health. Go get some blood work if it's available to you. How's your sleep been? How are your friendships? How's your family life? Are you working out? Are you pouring time into hobbies and art and things that fill you outside of work that are not driven by achievement? Then and only then can we turn to everything else. Okay, and on to lesson number 4. The decisions you make from your heart are not meant to make sense to anyone else, and that is exactly your lesson. I want to start this particular one with telling you the story of how I went to Vietnam with my boyfriend after being together for 4 months. So, my boyfriend and I, we started dating February of 2025. So, at the time that I'm recording this, we're on a year and almost 3 months. And we had a very deep connection when we first met. Our relationship kind of evolved very quickly. And I always knew in my heart that that was fine because we were so in love. We are so in love. We both wanted the same thing from a relationship. And so when we found each other, it was just like we just fit and it was great. And I had already had plans to travel internationally last year. And when we met, he was kind of looking to the same. So it just made sense that we go on a trip together. Except you can imagine that for some parents, having your daughter travel to a foreign country, which in this case was Vietnam, where we don't speak the language, where there's very little means of reaching us, they were not super hyped by that. And, you know, at 25, I think you're adult. I think that you have the reasons to do whatever you want because you're mature enough to make those decisions. But obviously, it did not make sense to a lot of other people in my life. And there were so many instances where people would give their often unsolicited opinions about what they thought about the matter and all the things that could go wrong. And witnessing in real time this like deep stillness and grounding and certainty that I felt from this decision that him and I had made together. We'd booked all the flights together, all the Airbnbs. We had like everything was sorted, and it felt so good to like witness that base of groundedness be threatened so many times by other people's very loving fears and opinions was one of the first times in my life that I can truly say I understood the concept of you, when it's rooted in your truth, you have to hold your ground. It led to a lot of conflict between my family and I. It led to obviously that strain in some way kind of trickling into my relationship, because when I showed up a little bit ungrounded or a little bit shaky from other people's opinions, my partner felt that, understandably so. But you're always faced with two decisions in those moments. It's, do you move towards fear because you perceive that it provides you with more control over the outcome of the situation and what people perceive of you? Or do you move towards what actually feels good, lean into it, and trust the goodness that you can feel in it? And there were so many more ways that this showed up in my life throughout the year. I knew I didn't want to take one of those two jobs that I mentioned earlier, but everybody was telling me that it had so much potential and all this good stuff, and I took it anyways, and then only for it to crash in my face literally 2 weeks later. And I knew going into it that I didn't want it. And I just kept punishing myself for not wanting it when everybody else was telling me that it was this amazing opportunity. And, again, all in good intent. But my love, if you're listening to this, it's called Letters to and from Women podcast, you're probably a woman. And my darling, feminine wisdom, feminine intuition is one of the most powerful things we have accessible to us. And when you deny it, when you put more value on how other people are telling you that you should live your life, the more you are robbing yourself from creating something out of your life that you can look back on with pride, and that you can look back on your last days on this earth and say, this was truly mine. I drew this with my own hand. I built it from the ground up, and I can truly say that every decision I made along the way was fully and authentically mine. And life is going to throw you a lot of those lessons along the way that teach you that your truth is your truth, and you have to learn to not let anything or anybody shake you from that seat in your soul. And it's damn uncomfortable, it's damn scary, but you don't owe anybody an explanation as to why you're seated at your throne in your soul. And that's all I'll say on number 4. Okay, and last but not least, number 5 of the 5 biggest lessons I wish I knew when I turned 25. Number 5 says, we take the pain of what we went through and turn it into suffering when we avoid self-forgiveness. I'm going to say that one more time. We take the pain of what we went through and turn it into suffering when we avoid self-forgiveness. Oh, so this one, to me, was probably the most powerful lesson I learned this year. And it was inspired from my 2-week silent meditation retreat, my first ever Vipassana experience, which, if you haven't listened to the episode I recorded on that a couple weeks ago, I will link it in the show notes so that you can go and listen to what that experience is all about in that episode. But basically, it was 10 days of being in complete silence, not talking to anybody, me alone with my own thoughts, meditating for over 100 hours over the course of those 10 days in silence. And when you're sitting with yourself and your thoughts for that long, things start to come up and you start being forced to look at a thing or two. And when I'd gone into that experience, I was in a really shaky headspace. Like, I just felt like I could not hear or discern my voice of truth from my anxiety. My body had not been a really nice place to be the weeks leading up to it. I was filled with so much overwhelm and self-distrust and pessimism. And definitely, I would say, like, I was kind of in a period of depression when I went into that experience. And what I sat with through those 100 hours of meditating was this realization that, like, I was in this really toxic, abusive relationship with myself. One of the things that they taught us to do in that retreat is just to observe your thoughts. Like, literally, the first 4 days was just us focusing on our breath and watching our thoughts pass like a cloud. And you start noticing a thing or two about your self-talk, when you get in the habit of not reacting to it, when you get in the habit of not reacting to the inner critic, the voice of hate, the voice of self-loathing. And I cried so many times witnessing that voice. I cried so many times when I realized how scared that voice was, when I realized how hateful that voice was for reasons that were not even my own, for reasons that I had picked up along the way about how I needed to scold myself when I didn't look, act, or speak in a certain way. Um, Ways that I learned that I had to abandon myself to be enough for this world. Ways that I learned that I had to be hyper vigilant over my appearance and my words and how I show up to make sure that I belong in the eyes of everybody. And when I realized just how easily I had attached to those scripts and run along with them. And by the way, before I go any further, it's a very natural part of being human to, and especially as a child, to take things in and not realize that you're literally cementing them in your subconscious. That is part of the depths of the adult journey, is to heal from those things and become who we're supposed to actually be. But until the unconscious becomes conscious, as Carl Jung so wonderfully said, it will run your life. And a lot of times, those scripts are seeds that other people planted there, but that we have continued watering and nurturing and adding fertilizer to with our own self doubt, our own poor sense of self worth, and our own lack of self love. And I remember almost a year prior to me doing the retreat, I had sat down with a family friend who was writing a book, and he had asked me some questions for this book on happiness. And he asked me, who is the person that has been the hardest on you in your life? And I remember during that interview, I had said someone that was not me. And then when I was sitting Vipassana, I thought back to that answer and I said, I have been the hardest on me, because I took every moment of pain and I turned it into my suffering by believing that I deserved what happened to me, by believing that I was less than enough, less than worthy of belonging, less than worthy of being a dreamer, less than worthy of being sensitive and the deep feeler that I am and the creative poet that I express myself as, and all these things that I had denied myself from because I truly believe that I was too much. And it was such a moment of liberation for me to realize that it was equally in my power to suffer as it was to save myself. And I can fully say that moving forward from that experience, I have chosen to be the one that saves me, and hopefully take the saving that I do for myself and give that liberation to other women on the path to healing deep self-loathing as well. So with that, I will conclude the 5 biggest lessons that I wish I knew at the start of 25. And I have a little birthday favor to ask you. If you are watching or listening to this episode for my 26th birthday, I would love to accumulate any and as many reviews for the podcast as possible to allow this movement and this mission to reach as many women as possible. So if you're listening, if you're watching, please leave a rating either on Apple or Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment or go and follow me on either of those platforms to leave a review, subscribe to the channel and to the show so that you don't miss future episodes that drop like this. If we're not already connected on Instagram, you can definitely follow me at It's Mariana Jimenez. I will include it here below me on the video, and reach out and let me know what you thought about this episode, what you thought about other episodes, if you've watched or listened to them. I would love to know as well what you're hoping to hear from me in future episodes. Thank you so much again for spending the last hours of 25 with me. I'm so excited to walk into 26 with you. I hope that this helps you if you are 25 or about to enter that chapter of your life. And whatever comes next, you are so worthy of love. You are worthy of belonging, and you are worthy of the dreams that have been planted in your heart because they are there for a reason. And the coolest part is they are uniquely yours. And I hope nothing but to be a supportive hand for you as you walk the path to achieving them. Mwah! I will see you in the next episode.